Hey everybody, it's Miss C. So today we're going to do some notes on actually applying what we know about our contours and the parts of a shadow in order to make shading make sense, if that makes sense. I've already done my cube and my rectangular prism, so you have an idea of what we're doing. Basically, I have drawn two cubes in this little section, and on one, I looked at where my light source was going to be and determined how many different contour grids I had, in this case 3, and where all my different parts of my shadow should be. And then over here on this one, instead of writing it all out, I actually did the shading. So over here, I did the same on my rectangular prism, but I moved my light source so that I would have to think about where all those pieces were gonna go and what they were gonna look like. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the pyramid and the cone with y'all, and then I will show you what it looks like whenever all of them are done as well. All right, so looking at my pyramid, I've drawn 2. Again, this one's gonna be my map, and I'm going to have my light source be above and towards kind of the middle of where I am. So it's not really to either side-ish, it's kind of off to one side, kind of off that way. It's gonna be coming this way, kind of like that. All right, so the first shadow that I always find is the core of my shadow. And right, so the first part that I look for is always gonna be the core of the shadow. So if I'm looking at my light source as being coming from this direction, and I'm gonna say from behind my pyramid, not like to the side directly, but kind of behind, then I know for a fact that this side over here is gonna be the furthest away. So this is gonna be the core of my shadow. Now, the next thing I tend to look for is my highlight, wherever my highlight's gonna be. And if my light source is behind my pyramid, it's the back side of this pyramid that I can't see. My highlight's way back here somewhere, and I can't see it. So I'm not gonna draw it in this. Next would be my transitional grays, which would be the side between, or the area between those two. So that's gonna be this side right here. This is gonna be transitional grays. Or in this case, one single transitional gray, because I have exactly 2 grids going on, and this is a flat-sided area, so it's only gonna be one shade of gray. It's not gonna be multiple shades of gray. After that, I need to know where my cast shadow is gonna go. If my light source is behind, then my shadow is gonna be going this way. And it's gonna be the shape of a triangle, kind of stretching out that way. It would normally go into this other side a little bit, so I'm just gonna go until it hits the side. This is my cast shadow. And my reflected light is gonna go usually on the back side of my core shadow. So I'm gonna have mine right about here, reflected light. So this is the map that I'm gonna be following. So over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with my core of my shadow. I start shading it in. Shade, 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 shade. I know right down here at the edge, I'm gonna go a little bit lighter because of that reflected light. Give that a little bit of a fade so it's not just in nothing. Over here, my transitional grays are just gonna be a nice middle gray, because I'm gonna assume that this is a nice in the middle guy. I won't have a highlight because he's on the other side. And I'm gonna have my cast shadow back here, nice and dark. Again, actual shadows might be a little sharper, might be a little bit fuzzier, might be a little bit paler towards one end, but this is a nice practice from scratch. And just because, I'm gonna take the back edge past this little table that I've drawn. I'm gonna shade that a light medium gray, just so that there's a difference between this area behind my little table and this area ahead of my little table. And that gives me a pyramid shaded. All right, going over to the cones, here's where we have a little bit more difficulty, because remember, right over here, our grid is gonna have some straight lines and some curved lines, which means right here, there's actually going to be a gradient. So first things first, I gotta figure out where my light source is gonna be. I'm gonna have it be far off over here. Over here, this one's gonna be far off over here, going that way. So first thing I'm gonna look about is my core of my shadow. The core of my shadow is gonna be the back side of this cone. So it's actually going to be something of a wedge shape, like this. About like so. This is gonna be the core of my shadow. My highlight is going to be along this edge. And again, this is going to be a triangle shape because look, it's basically a triangle with a curvy bottom. So all of my shading is going to look kind of like triangles with curvy bottoms. So my highlight is going to be this edge over here. And my transitional grays are going to be a gradient over here. And this one is going to be multiple values because, as I said, that's a curved surface. I need to make it look like it's bending around. Right over here, this little sliver right there, that's going to be my reflected light. And just like our pyramid, our overall cast shadow is going to be a cone shape. And it's going to be coming back this way. Make sure you get all the way to the outside edges of your shape for that cast shadow. Otherwise, it'll look like part of your little piece is not actually casting any shadows at all. So over here, this is what that's going to look like. I'm going to draw on the core of my shadow this nice, strongly dark triangle shape, because again, this guy is basically a 3D triangle in a circle. We have our highlight that we're not going to bother with at all. It's going to stay nice and light over here. And so the rest of this can be shaded in as a gradient. So I'm going to start with a nice dark gray, and then as I move this way, it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter until I have nothing left. Then I just want it to look nicely smooth, so I'm going to make sure that I have a nice transition between my lighter grays and my darker grays, and I want it to just blend straight into that core of my shadow. I don't want them to appear super different. You can see it a little better if I tilt the paper like that. All right, so cast shadow is going to come back this way, all the way to the edges of my shape until I make a point. Made that one a little bit stretched out, but that's fine. Shade that all the way in, all the way around, like so. And then for funsies, shade this background so that my shape stands out a little bit more and my setting stands out a little bit more. All right, so you go ahead and make a guess on how you think a cylinder and a sphere is going to go, and come back again in just a minute for the answer. All right, so here is my completed exercise, and you might notice a couple things about the cylinder and the sphere. For my cylinder, it is very much like my cone, except instead of having triangular shapes on all of these sections, they are more rectangular. If you look at a cylinder from the side, it does in fact look like a rectangle, at least if you look at it just carefully enough that you don't see the top or the bottom, and it's like at the right exact angle. Our sphere, you'll also notice, looks different than all of the shadings of spheres I've shown you so far. I've told you that depending on where your light source is, the shape can change. So looking over here, I want to have my light on the left, and I also want it to be coming from behind my ball, from behind my sphere. And because of that, the shadow shape changed. I've told you for spheres, it's really easy to think about shapes of the moon. If you think about whenever the moon is is bigger than half full and but less than completely full, it is this shape called gibbons. And depending on the angle, it'll be a waxing gibbons or a waning gibbons, but that just tells you if it's a right or left, and I never remember which is which, so you're gonna forgive me, it's gibbons. And now my shadow is still following those same lines that I have from my little surface. I'm following this contour of my surface, this rounded contour here, as well as around that outside to make what my core of my shadow is going to be. But it's going to be bigger because my shadow's on the side closer towards me than further away. You'll also notice on the cylinder that I have two areas of highlight. I actually have one along my curved edge, and my top is also a highlight. Just because I only have so many parts of a shadow doesn't mean they might not show up more than one place. That'll get more complex the more complex shapes you have, such as like a human face will usually have multiple highlights or multiple cores of shadows, and things of that nature. But for now, this is what you want to get done. Yours might look a little different if you move your light sources around, which I highly encourage you to try out. Even if you don't think you're 100% successful, it's best to try it and then realize where you went wrong, because you'll learn more from that than just copying me and going, but why doesn't it work this way every time? Because it doesn't. All right, that's everything. Bye.